Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you on June 30th on behalf of Arcadia Economics. And that's right, we're amazingly halfway through the year. Hard to imagine. And another half year passes by, and precious metals meander at their current levels. And today's video is really about, well, when is silver going to go higher in price? Um, What's the short answer to that? I wish I knew. I really wish I did, and perhaps I like to feel a little bit proud of being able to acknowledge it's one of those things where, well, there's a few people who perhaps if they put an exact date on something or a specific timeline in a situation like this, it's interesting to watch what happens. And in fact, we recently did a video about a metals trader named Andrew Maguire, who's been an interesting figure in the gold and silver community for the last couple of years and has presented a lot of good information and insight into how some of these manipulations work. And again, he mentioned that he saw in a couple of weeks, which was an interview that took place a couple of weeks ago, and now is basically he forecasts that based on something he's seeing, there's a potential trigger coming up in early July, somewhere in that first week of July. So, it's like if someone, it always depends on who you're hearing it from. If someone works at one of the banks that is on record now as having admitted manipulating the market, or some of the other banks that I'll say, in my opinion, I believe are doing things that again are blatantly in contrast with U.S. securities law and would be considered manipulation. So to my knowledge, it seems like as if they're still somewhat in control there. So unless you have someone who's actually able to control what's going on, and they're, you hear something from them that you believe is genuine, it's one of those things where I don't really know that there are many people. I don't know of any public silver analysts or anyone who's been commenting on this that knows exactly when this is going to happen, and I wouldn't be anywhere near as audacious to claim that I do. But again, what I think is can help in the profitability of approaching a situation like this, where I still feel there is great opportunity, especially when you're looking at a stock market that's at all-time highs and, in my opinion, bubbles in the stock, bond, and real estate markets. It's not an easy time to know what to invest in. I don't think, I don't have any, the money that I have saved none is in stocks, or let me correct that, not in a broad index. I do have some mining shares that I own, but no real estate or bonds. Because again, when when something's at seeming levels that we've discussed before in bubble territory, that's one of the reasons why, if you're trying to invest in that traditional sense that we've grown up in, where you're looking for a 5 or 10% return, and seeing how consistent fund manager has been doing, well, if you have a bubble or an asset bubble crash every 5 to 10 years, well, of course that's going to skew the results. So that was one of the reasons why I walked away from trading options, where it seemed like, okay, well, I guess you could do this stuff short term, although if you really just see the bigger picture and what's actually happening, which again, okay, so we get it. So the government's a bit of a Ponzi scheme. They're probably never going to pay back any of the money that they borrow, and there's a good chance the Federal Reserve is... they have the numbers of how much they print, although I've always wondered, based on some of the other things we've caught them not being so truthful about, who knows how much money is really printed I'm stunned the more I read and learn of how much of what I thought was real. And again, I say this having gone to business school and worked in different financial shops and feeling like I thought I had some clue of what was going on and then realizing otherwise. Um, so again, and I'm not giving any personalized advice here, or just economic insight, but it makes it a very challenging time to know what to do, whether it's money that you have saved or, again, I was working for a trading shop on the New York Stock Exchange, and when I started to see how the whole economy was really constructed, it's, it's the kind of position I always wondered, will that be around? Will so much of what changes in the world when a lot of these excesses, and especially in the financial system and in the other places it shows up, like building tanks and subscribing painkillers and just some of the stuff that, as anyway, has become more clear to me and changed the way I look at things. And certainly having felt pretty confident for a couple of years that there are forces building in these markets that at some point are going to explode, which again comes back to, at least from my perspective, seeing it as a matter of when rather than if. So, again, so here we are, 7 minutes just to say I don't have the first clue. Although I'd like to take educated guesses, and again, I think you pay attention. The way I've always approached this situation has been thinking, well, if I were an employee or a reporter and I'd spoken to Bernie Madoff or Enron or any of these scandals that implode, if you were there, if you were around in the area, you probably would notice signs. And so trying to take that same type of thinking to, in this case in particular, silver, or when will real estate crash, or when is the stock market bubble finally going to collapse? Well, obviously it hasn't happened yet, so we haven't been that close. But these are the signs that you look for when you see things that are unusual, or pieces of metal flying here, or people resigning from companies. The types of things that we saw happen more and more in 2007, leading up to what would happen a year later with Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers disappearing. And I think Merrill Lynch failed, yet they are somehow always still around. So who knows? And we've seen a lot. It's, to me, I guess it depends on your perspective. Obviously, I study and think about these things and like to research, and always searching for any information that would give you any clues. And I remember when I left Wall Street in 2012, I was stunned that it hadn't happened back then. If you told me 5 years later we'd still be watching some of these bubbles get bigger. Sure, the Fed has raised interest rates, almost a whole point now. And remember, that's 8 years later. This isn't temporary anymore. So if the whole thing worked and it's fixed, and Bernanke and Yellen came in and saved the day, then sure, why not just unload the balance sheet and raise interest rates? But of course, that would collapse the whole thing overnight. So things just remain in purgatory until something in the market changes, what we're witnessing. And in either case, I'll certainly be looking, and we're going to keep sharing videos. So hopefully the information's helpful. And again, by all means, I always encourage you to go and double check the things you hear me say or hear anyone say, and form your own opinions. But I'd like to present in these videos some of the things that, until I really started searching away from the mainstream media and Wall Street, that were never really as clear to me, and hopefully they're become a little easier for you. So with that said, have a great weekend. It's Friday night here in Denver, and as always, appreciate you watching, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks.